And again, back in the Atom IDE, let's have a look at creating this object. So I'll just copy the code over and place that in there. Okay, now what we're going to do is that we're going to use the AWS JavaScript SDK for this. We're not going to use any of the Cognito stuff. And we're going to create a new S3 object, and then we're going to call put object and put an object into a location on a bucket. So what we need to pass to S3 is we need to pass the bucket name, and then to put that object we need to put in these object parameters. So those object parameters are going to be the bucket name, which will be \lab-b Cody. It will be different for you, of course, because S3 bucket names are unique. Then we need to put in a key. Now what a key is simply the location and name of that, or the path to that that object when it is uploaded. So what we've got here is it's going to be in Cognito \Academy, and then the identity ID of that Cognito user, and then it's going to be called test.json. Now if you remember from our role that we created, we do have access to Cognito \Academy and a folder which is in the name or in the identity ID of that user. So that role will allow us to do that. So we've got that, we've got our object parameters there. Our content type is going to be a JSON file, and the body will be simply an object called test with a key test, and we're just going to say it works. So it's going to be a JSON object there, and we just need to JSON stringify that data before we send it over to S3, and that's what we do there, and that will be the body of our object that's uploaded. So what we'll find when we upload it, we'll find in that directory Cognito \Academy and then the identity ID, we're going to have a file called test.json, and inside that file will just be a simple test it worked key and value there. So when we pass those object parameters to S3 put object, we'll either get an error or we're going to get a success call there. So that's all there is to it. I'll just save that and we'll upload that to Amazon S3. And again, we make sure that we have public access to that. And again, we make sure that we clear our browser cache and then refresh our application. Okay, so let's create an S3 object. Okay, so that worked fine. We've got the success callback. Let's have a look and see what happened in the console. So what's happened here is we've got our test.json has gone to that location in our bucket. So let's have a look at the bucket and see what happened. Just refresh the screen here. Okay, so now we have, which we didn't have before, we have a Cognito folder. Let's have a look inside that. We've got a \Academy there, and we've got another folder in the identity ID of the logged in user. So let's have a look at that, and we've actually got a test.json. Let's click on that, and let's download it and see what it looks like. Okay, so there we can see we've uploaded a JSON file and it's come out as test for a key, and it worked, which is exactly what we wanted. But of course you can do something more with that. You might want to have, create the next Dropbox or whatever and have it so that users can upload files and whatever they want to do. So it's all up to you what you want to do with these user credentials. Okay, so that brings us to the end of all of that Cognito stuff. What I'm going to do now is that when we ran this code, you notice that it took a long time for the JavaScript SDK to come in, and that's not something that you really want to do because the JavaScript SDK is quite big. It has all of the SDKs for all of the services for AWS, so it's a really good idea to really cull that down as much as possible. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to the techniques that we can use to make this load a lot quicker. So if you're a React.js user or developer, you're probably quite familiar with Webpack. I use that quite a bit myself, so you can use that to really cull down the size of the JavaScript SDK. But I'll show you another way that AWS has where you can actually build your own version of the AWS JavaScript SDK that will only have the functionality that you require.